Good morning. We are off for another day. I am going to the office for a little bit. Got a couple drop-offs to make on the way. Then this afternoon, it is prep for session. I got some scouting to do for locations. And then we go through the routine of cleaning gear, charging batteries, getting everything ready for actual picture taking. So that's exciting. Ready to get that started. I thought maybe today, since I'm headed there yet again, I'd talk to you a little bit about the bank and how it's part of the plan and the process of running this business. As you may be aware, art was a big part of my upbringing. Father was an architect, which is obviously artistic in its nature. My grandmother was actually a real artist. Her parents were painters, so like there are arts in the family for sure. And I studied it in school. Took a lot of art classes. I was kind of a weird kid. I had a lot of art stuff, but then I did a lot of sports. So I kind of lived in both worlds in high school. But went to college as an art major, studied that for 2 years, did really well, but decided that it wasn't what I wanted to study, that I wanted to do something interesting and different, and ended up studying and getting degrees in both philosophy and psychology. Then I graduated college and thought that I wanted to be a financial advisor, help people invest their money and plan for their future. That sounded interesting and intriguing and something worthwhile doing. So I started looking at banks, because most banks have trust departments, and that's a good way to kind of cut your teeth and get started. After college, I was in Atlanta looking for a job. Joey was here in Zanesville doing the same in Atlanta from here. The plan was that we would move to Atlanta, thinking that the job market down there would be worlds better than it was in Zanesville. And she went to an interview just sort of as a favor for a former boss, actually, where she internship one summer during college. Thought it would be a good practice, which I'm sure it would be. She ended up getting a job offer, and the job market wasn't great. So we talked, she took the job, and I was going to pack my stuff and move up here. Her first day of work was 9/11/2001, the day that the Twin Towers fell. And I was still looking for a job at that point. So you can imagine after that, in that period, some of you obviously were around and remember that time. And some of you, you're just going to have to use your imaginations. But the job market was not the best. Getting a job was pretty difficult. I moved up here. My mother had grown up in Reynoldsburg, the east side of Columbus. And I lived with my grandparents there for a couple months looking for a job. I had looked in Columbus for a while. That really wasn't panning out real well. Things were just really difficult. I'd go to a job fair and there would be thousands of people there, just a lot of people looking for work. Then I started kind of creeping this way. So I started looking in sort of the Newark Granville area, and then finally sort of broke down and said, okay, I'll start looking in Zanesville. Not that there's anything wrong in Zanesville, and actually I now love being in Zanesville. But having grown up and being sort of a big city kid, the idea of moving to small rural Ohio was not at the top of my list. But eventually that's what happened, and I ended up here on the south end of Zanesville at a small community bank. When I started here, they hired me as a staff accountant, which is really kind of weird because I had one general accounting class in college. I did really well at it, but that was all of the accounting that I had. So they hired me knowing nothing pretty much, and so I got to learn everything on the job, which is a really fun way to learn. My brain is wired that way to be learning all the time, so I'm the weird guy that like buys books and just reads to learn when I'm interested in a topic. So I spent the first 3 years just working sort of in the accounting department, crunching numbers, really learning about the banking world, the financial world, and accounting in general for banks. Did really well at it, was pretty successful here doing that. And then after that, I kind of moved into kind of I wouldn't upper management, but just definitely in the sort of the managing side of the bank, working with upper management, the executive team, doing all sorts of stuff as a member of the accounting department in a small institution. We had obviously our hands in a lot of different aspects of the bank from an accounting standpoint. So I'd seen a lot and knew a lot of how each department worked. So it kind of made sense that I would fall into a role that had a lot to do with sort of coordinating all of that. So that's what I did for the second 3 years that I was here, till I left. After 6 years, almost to the date, I decided that banking wasn't for me. I enjoyed what I learned, and the only part I enjoyed the work. But after sort of moving up into a management position, executive management team got swapped out, new leadership, and for whatever reason, I ended up back in the daily accounting role, which is not something that I really wanted to be doing. I'd done it for a while. I'd learned what I felt like I could learn. And I'd moved into a position where I had some say in what was going on. I certainly didn't have the final say, but I had input. My ideas were heard. And it was fun, you know, it was something I enjoyed doing. And so when I had to go back to accounting, which was sort of for me, I know some people enjoy it, but for me it was sort of dull. You know, I did not enjoy it. I did not want to be doing that on a day-to-day basis, and so I left. Taking half an hour, maybe an hour out of the day today, we're going to have a parent-teacher conference with Andy's teachers at preschool. So, got to do that. One of the nice things about working for yourself is it's hard to find time sometimes, but you can. You can make sure things like this get done. So that is a definite benefit. All right, well, parent-teacher conference is over. That took about an hour. Great meeting. Fortunate to have an amazing young girl as a child, as our first child going through preschool. So that was a good meeting, and it's always nice to hear nice things about your child. Wanted to get back to a little story about the bank. After I left, this is interesting actually, I knew I was going to leave, and I knew that photography was something that I was going to be trying to do and get into. So I ordered my first kit, which was Nikon body, 2 pro level lenses, and a flash. I just went ahead and bought the high-end stuff because I knew this was something I wanted to do as a business. A lot of people, you know, will start low and then upgrade, and I just jumped in. But I had it delivered to my office at the bank. I just think that's kind of funny. Anyway, so I walked out of the bank a little while after that event, had my photo gear, started doing that, and shortly thereafter I left in the beginning of January, like the first week of January. And then in late February, I think actually February 28th, we also bought a coffee shop. That's another story. That lasted for 3 years. So while we were running the coffee shop, which I ran day to day, I was also starting the photography thing. First year, did 3 or 4 sessions. And then for the next few years after that, not a whole lot more than that, maybe 10, a dozen. That's just kind of how it starts. You don't get real successful real quick at this. You got to build a portfolio and build reputation to get your name out there, and work at building a style. So that took a while. After 3 years in the coffee shop, we had to pull the plug. It was 2008, 9, and 10, which if you're into the financial history of our country, you know that was a pretty terrible time. That was right when
Bush was exiting, Obama was coming in, TARP was happening, the bailout of the auto industry, and the economy was more or less in the tanks. So things like coffee just didn't get bought very frequently. So that didn't work out for us. So finally had to say the heck with it, throw in the towel, again, walked away. Right at the time we called it quits at the coffee shop, the bank actually called me and asked if I would be willing to come back on a consulting contract. A number of the things that I had been doing for them years prior, they had not found anybody to do. So they asked me if I would come back and just kind of come in as a part-time consultant and clean up a bunch of reports and things like that they were not happy with, that had stopped running properly, and just kind of get them back up to speed as far as that area of the bank was concerned. And so we had a little bit of negotiation about what it would take to make that happen and how that would work and look, and it was actually a perfect fit because I was obviously leaving the coffee shop behind. I had sort of this nascent photography business that was not yet by any stretch of the imagination a full-time salary that I wanted to continue to work at and on, try to build into a real thing, and the ability to go and work part-time on my own schedule as needed for a decent salary or decent hourly wage really fit the bill. And so, man, that was been 6 years ago, almost 6.5 years ago. I went back part-time there. And ever since then, I've been doing that a little bit and then building the business. And at the beginning, it was a lot of bank and a little bit of photography, and that has just slowly, over the years, begun to shift. Every year, the photo clients, the number of them grow, and so I can spend less time at the bank. Right now, I'm doing 3 mornings a week there, so not very many hours right now. When things slow down, I'll spend a little more time there, which is obviously a nice thing to have in my back pocket. So when the photo business slows, I can head over there and continue to have an income. The reality is, if it were just me and probably me and Joey, or even me and Joey and one kid, probably could make a full-time go of the photography business. This year, we're seeing a level of success that would warrant a standalone full-time business. But the reality is, I have 5 kids, and so there's 7 of us, and we could probably make it on the photo business income this year, but it would be tight. And so, in business, there are a lot of times when things just have to be practical. So rather than struggle financially, I opt to still go to the bank. They still need me. I like the people. The work is okay. But it really augments the photography income real well. And so we are able to live between those two things. So, in the coming years, as photography continues to build, and hopefully we get into some new markets, and the demand continues to rise for that, maybe the bank will go away. I don't know. All right, so that's the story on the bank. That's why you see me going there in the mornings some days. Now, story time is over. Got to go out and scout some locations for Claire's session tomorrow. So you're going to come along, and we're going to check some fields and the lake and some other areas that we use, and find out whether or not they're going to work for tomorrow. The thing about shooting outside is you never know what it's going to look like. People cut things down, trees bloom at different times, water levels are at different heights on any given day. So we got to go see the day before sessions what things look like. So just about every day before session, this is the deal.